Yemen? No. Yugoslavia? Abstain.
The resolution.
This has to do with the creation of Israel. I knew that it had, it was a UN vote called the Partition Plan that was voted on in 1947, right? Post World War II. The Partition Plan gave away Palestinian territory. At the time of the plan, actual Jewish people, Jews in Palestine, what was called Palestine then, owned about 6% of the land. And the partition plan gave them 55% of the land. So basically took 50% of the entire land of that area and just gave it to people that did not own it or live there or anything. That you may have known. By the way, before 1947, Palestine was kind of owned by Britain in a colonial sense, as in they were the occupiers. They claimed to own Palestine. And so the partition plan removed Britain as the colonial ruler and made Israel the colonial ruler, connected, of course, to the U.S. and Britain, though, the Zionist project. But here's something that I did not know. In this UN vote that created Israel in 1947, do you know the number of countries that actually voted in the existence of Israel, actually voted for the Zionist project to begin? Here's straight out of Wikipedia. The date was November 1947. It was Resolution 181. And it's kind of small, but as you can see, it was 33 countries voted to create Israel. 13 voted against. 10 abstained. So if you add the abstained with the voted against, you've got 23 against 33 who voted for this to happen. Zionists to become the owners of 55% of Palestine. Not only is that like, wow, that's like 33 to 23 is kind of crazy that was the vote. But you also might go, why are there so few countries in the UN? Was it because the other countries were just like, we're not really into that right now, man? Because there's 190 some countries now. And most of those like territories like basically existed back then in 1947. But you know why there were so few countries in the UN at the time? Because most of the world was under colonial rule. Most of the world was occupied by Britain, by the United States, by Germany, by France. Of this vote, this 33 to 23 vote, there was zero Africa basically represented. There was almost zero Latin America represented, because they were all considered to be part of these other countries, even though they were completely different people. It was just Britain saying, we own fill in the blank. We own the countries in Africa. We own countries and of course, the countries in Africa were drawn up by their colonial powers in the 1855 Berlin Conference, where nary a black person was present. Nary an African was present. It was just a bunch of old white guys in a room, put a map on the wall, draw lines across Africa. Didn't matter if it cut straight through tribes, put two tribes in the same country that hated each other. Didn't matter. White people deciding how the maps of the world would be shaped. But so this means that the only reason Israel exists as this imperial colonial project is because so much of the world was oppressed at the time of the vote, was colonized at the time of the vote, that it existed at all. And of course, then you have 55% of Palestine given to a tiny percentage of the people there. And they go on to perpetrate the first Nakba, which was massacre of obviously forced migration was the number one thing that was done. You have millions of people were forced out of their homes and their villages. And I said forced migration was the number one thing that was done. But of course, also there was hundreds of thousands of murders.
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי. היה לי מקלע עם 250 כדורים.
Just giant massacres. Some put the estimate of the number of massacres that happened during that time at 200 separate massacres of just going into Palestinian towns and basically saying, if you don't leave, we're just going to start executing people. And then doing that. Mandate reaffirmed the British commitment to the Balfour Declaration for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. So that was 1917. And this doesn't mean that Jews around the world weren't just irreparably harmed by the Holocaust, by World War II. You know, I had family members that, like I guess he'd be my step grandfather. My grandmother's second husband, lost like his entire family. He was from Germany, fled the Holocaust at age 18, and lost basically his entire family in the Holocaust. And it doesn't mean they weren't harmed, but using that as an excuse to then steal crazy amounts of land and execute the people who won't willingly leave is repulsive, is epically repulsive. So obviously there's a lot more to the history of Israel that I don't have time to get into here, but that was a new fact I learned from Brian Becker's podcast and Richard Becker's book that they were talking about. The tiny number of countries that actually voted Israel into existence. 33. We now have 190 some countries in the world. 33 voted for the currently genocidal state of Israel.